Well, welcome everyone to our May PowerShell community call. We are so glad you are here. I will note to everyone that this call is being recorded, and you can expect to see this on our YouTube channel within about 2 weeks or so. You'll notice in the chat, Stephen has posted a link to our discussion for this community call. That includes our agenda. And just a reminder that you can always use this discussion to post ahead of time any topics you have, any questions you have, and we always welcome community demos as well. I know we have a few awesome ones for today, but if you have more ideas or demos you would like to do either today or in future months, please post that as well. If you have questions that come up as we're going through our topics, please feel free to use the chat, use the raise hand feature, or use the PowerShell discussion as well. And with that, we can go ahead and get started. We have a pretty busy agenda. And the first topic is our PowerShellGet 7.4 update. And this is first topic is me, so I'll pass it to myself. So we have a blog post on this. I will post the blog in the chat in case you miss any of the updates that I make. So I first want to thank everyone who's been on this PowerShellGet v3 journey with us. I know it's been a long and winding journey, and we've made a lot of changes along the way. A lot of these changes have been in response to our preview users and to community feedback. So I just want to emphasize how important our preview users and our community feedback has been in our decision-making process. This is a pretty big change, so I definitely want folks to tune into this. So this is in regards to how PowerShellGet is going to ship in box in PowerShell 7 moving forward. And this is beginning in our June preview, which should be PowerShell 7.4 Preview 5. So our new plan is to ship PowerShell 3 side by side with PowerShell 2.2.5. So 2.2.5 is the current latest version of PowerShellGet. We're going to continue to ship that in box in PowerShell 7.4 through PowerShell 7.4 GA. And the biggest reason for this is because 7.4 is an LTS release, and we're getting PowerShellGet 3.0 later in the preview cycle than we kind of originally anticipated. So the previous plan was to just ship PowerShellGet 3 in 7.4, and now we've kind of shifted and we're going to ship side by side. So PowerShellGet 2 is going to continue to ship inbox in PowerShell 7.4. So that's the first big note. The second really big change is we've decided to change the name of the module that was PowerShellGet 3.0. We've decided to rename that module. And so this is kind of because all of the commandlet names are different. If you're familiar with PowerShellGet v3, we renamed the commandlets to be PSResource. And this is for a few reasons. If you want to go back and read the RFC, read the blog post, we renamed the commandlets from install module to install PSResource for a few reasons. They don't just install modules anymore. We combine the commandlets to install DSC resources, install scripts all into a single commandlet. And then we also have some future looking plans to install arbitrary nutmegs using these commandlets as well. So given these changes, we kind of wanted a clean break. And so we are now going to be calling this module Microsoft.PowerShell.PSResourceGet. And so starting in the next beta release of this module, it will be called no longer PowerShellGet v3, but instead Microsoft PowerShell PSResourceGet, or PSResourceGet will be the shorthand for this module that we'll probably refer to it as. And so that will ship side by side with PowerShellGet 2.2.5, beginning in PowerShell 7 for Preview 5, which is the June preview release of PowerShell 7.4. Beginning in PowerShell 7.5, we do plan to remove PowerShell 2.2.5 and ship PowerShellGet 3.0. And now this is where it gets a little confusing. PowerShellGet 3.0 is now going to be what was formerly our compatibility layer. So we do have a compatibility layer, which is the old commandlets, which proxy the implementation for the v3 functionality. So it's install module. You call install module, but it's actually calling install PSResource as a proxy function. And so beginning in PowerShell 7.5 Preview 1, we're going to ship the compatibility layer with PSResourceGet. And so that's kind of the general new plan going forward. In the blog post, there's a link to a GitHub issue if you want to give your feedback on this plan. and kind of hear more of like the details and the rationale. Happy to take more questions on this. I know it's very confusing. Someone commented that they lost audio. If anyone can confirm that, that would
I
be
can hear
great.
audio just fine, although I
Okay.
do have questions, and I'm going to wait till later to get say them.
Put it
Okay.
in chat.
Perfect.
Put questions in chat.
Yeah,
There.
feel free to put questions in chat. Also, feel free to use if you have like longer form or you like want to like gather your thoughts. Please use the GitHub issue as well. I don't want this to feel like I just heard this big news and it's already been decided. If you want to read our rationale, we've been kind of discussing this in the open in GitHub over the last few weeks as well. So I know it's a pretty big change, and I'm sure I just used a lot of words multiple times. It's very confusing. So read the GitHub, read the blog, read the GitHub issue. Feel free to ask questions, but definitely wanted to make this announcement, and happy to answer any more questions about all of this.
Can I just add something real quick to that? Like,
Yeah.
it may seem strange why we're doing this naming change, but the primary motivation is to not break customers when you do update module PowerShell get, right? So in that sense, they'll get the proxy compat module because that's what we're going to be calling PowerShell get v3 in the future. The syntax will be the same. Your existing scripts will work, and that module will be dependent on PS resource get. So that way, you get full functionality in the future as we add more capability to PS resource get. Hopefully, people would just use that by default. We'll track it via data on downloads, I guess, for now, because we don't have other telemetry. And maybe there's a deprecation in the future. Unlikely because it's part of Windows, but that's a challenge that we have to figure out.
Yeah, and I guess one other reason we kind of go into this if you go into the blog post in the GitHub issue, but we didn't want to break folks who are using fully qualified names with their module. So if they were using like PowerShell get / install module, not breaking those folks. We did a pretty extensive search of like GitHub and those sorts of things, and we noticed a lot of folks in automation were using fully qualified names. So not breaking folks in automation was a really big consideration in making this decision. So yeah, that was a big factor as well. So what's the total time frame on this? Total time frame on this. So in terms of the initial change, like shipping in PowerShell 7 preview, I mentioned is in June. 7.4 is set to GA this fall. I think like RC is targeted for September and GA around November, but that's always dependent on like when .NET ends up shipping, how RCs go, all those sorts of factors. And then 7.4 preview 1, I'm guessing will hit around January. It typically does, but that's kind of dependent. And then like 7.5 will kind of come in the next year cycle similarly. I don't know if that answers the time frame question.
I think the
It
time frame is probably more about
does.
PowerShell get, or is it about PowerShell or PowerShell get?
It's just more okay. Here's a big change coming down the pike that might have some disruptive, impact on stuff downstream. I might be one of those things downstream. So exactly what sort of runway am I looking at to figure this out, adapt if need be. Hopefully I won't have to, but if I do, I want to have some sense of, do I need to get on this next day because it's happening next week, or do we need to get on this next month? It's happening a couple months from now.
Yeah.
Uh,
So I think that's
eh,
like the other thing is I'll publish a list. We have a list of like what essentially like the breaking changes are with the proxy functions, because there are a few small breaking changes. I'll definitely get that published up. I can put that up today. Honestly, we have the list locally. But that was a big reason too, is like we're coming in late in the preview cycle if you're a 7.4 user. And so we didn't want, that's why we're shipping side by side, essentially. Yeah. So it wasn't
yeah,
like, oh yeah, we're shipping tomorrow, by the way. Hope you can update all your automation scripts.
yeah,
Yeah.
and the other bit is it just a proxy? Because proxy functions are great, but they have a few more limitations compared to using a proxy function as an inner function and adding some more, you know, happy aliasing on top, for instance. So is it just a proxy function or not?
So Jim wrote the compat module, so he might be like better able to answer that question, but my understanding is that it's just a proxy function.
It it is they are proxy functions using the API that we have to create proxies, and with some manipulation of the parameters to uh, um, hook up the parameters that are available in the previous version to the parameters that are used in the new version with regard to, especially with regard to version numbers, which the way we're handling version numbers in the new module is a little bit different, but can be expressed with the old ones. There are some parameters that are available in the old commandlets that are simply don't have any use in the new commandlets, and those are simple bit buckets. You use that parameter, it's not used.
Cool.
It's just simply ignored.
It does sound like you did the extra good due diligence, and thank you for doing that. I'll look through, but I feel much better hearing this.
Yeah, I think the repository for those proxies is a public repository, so you can absolutely walk through those and see the implementations.
Thank you.
Uh-huh.
Awesome. Well, I think I see the other question got answered in chat, so I think I'll pass it on to Anam to give an update on our recent PowerShellGet beta release.
Hey guys, I just wanted to mention that we did a preview release for PowerShellGet. So we shipped beta 21, which moves us off of the NuGet client APIs for local repositories. So we aren't using NuGet APIs anymore for search or install scenarios, and we have seen perf improvements in those scenarios now. So that's great. We also included a bug fix for the response didn't contain properties issue that was reported on GitHub after our previous release, so after beta 20. So that is also now fixed. We also included some fixes for pipeline input when you're accepting it into one commandlet. So that should, I guess if you're piping in a result from find into the save commandlet, it should get all the necessary information now, even though it wasn't previously doing that fully. And then on this preview, we are working on the ADO feed. So there were a couple of bugs that were reported for search and install scenarios when it comes to the ADO feed. So we're going to fix that, as well as some other bug fixes that the community had reported. So just want to thank you guys for the community feedback. It has really helped us going forward, as Sydney has mentioned, and we're just kind of prioritizing fixing those bugs. Yep.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that. And then the next item is Microsoft Build. So as some of you may know, next week is Microsoft Build, which is Microsoft's big developer conference. It is a hybrid conference, so it's going to be both in person in Seattle and also virtually online. For those of you who may be, if there's an off chance that any of you are planning to attend in person in Seattle, I will be at the conference staffing an experts booth on Tuesday and Wednesday of next week. So if you are in person, I would very much love to see you. So do please come and say hi. But for those of you who may not be able to attend, the PowerShell team, we actually don't have an official session for builds, but Jason, Steven, and I got together and decided to sort of film our own session. So we'll be releasing that next week in conjunction with Build via our YouTube channel, and we'll be publicizing that on Twitter. So if you feel so inclined, please feel free to share that with people you may know or may be interested in learning a little bit more about PowerShell, or maybe getting started with PowerShell or looking for PowerShell sort of tips or what's new with PowerShell. So be on the lookout early next week for our sort of build video. And if you are in person in Seattle, please do come say hi. This isn't on the agenda, but also we will be at PSConf EU next month, and also very excited about that. So I will be at PSConf EU in Prague next month, as will Steven, Andy, and then Jody. So looking very much forward to that, and also hoping to say hi to lots of you there. And with that, I'll pass things over to Steven, who's going to talk about the PSReadLine beta.
Cool, thanks, Sydney. Let me share my screen. You guys see my terminal?
Yep.
Cool. So I want to talk a little bit about we did a PSReadLine beta 2.3 beta 1 release, I think I guess 2 weeks ago now. But wanted to highlight some of the cool new things in that release. We had a number of few little bug fixes, but probably the biggest thing I want to show off is the addition of a tooltip feature for list view in PSReadLine predictor. So I'll zoom in my screen a little bit here. If I do excuse me. So right now I have AZ predictor and our completion predictor, which I'll talk about in a moment here, installed. But if I do get filed item, oh no, these are all history. I need to show something that has a predictor. So I'll take a look at some of the AZ predictors. So this is as I showed off in our last beta, we kind of have this new metadata line that shows you where you are in the scrollable list view here. Gives you a little bit of a navigation tool for the different predictors you have installed. But one thing we added for plugin predictors is actually, hang on. Oh, hang on. Do I have the? Not the beta's installed. Give me 1 second. Yeah. Huh. Okay. Well, I can show this off with the completion predictor. So get item. So here we go. The completion. There we go. So the completion predictor have the tooltip new feature that we've added to PSReadLine can be seen right here. So this is just taking a previously existing tooltip property from predictors and then now just displaying it to you in the list view as you're kind of navigating. So this can be great for learning a little bit more about like the parameters that the completion predictor is giving. AZ predictor also gives a number of kind of descriptions of what the AZ predictor suggestions are giving you, and this is pretty cool. It's an easier way to kind of get a little bit of a investigation into each of these properties. One thing this also works for too is for some of the .NET objects here, and so let me see if I can find one here, but I wanted to show off how we handle larger tooltips. Here we go. So tooltips may not be completely one line, and so we render up to 4 lines in the list view when list view is enabled. But when tooltips are more than 4 lines, we have another tip that says, hey, if you press F4, it will load the tooltip in an alternate screen buffer, so then you can look and navigate and read more about it. And then you can just go back with Q and you're back where you started. So this is great for kind of exploring the properties that predictors can kind of give you. And so folks who make predictors can populate the tooltips with whatever they want. Let me see if I can get some of the AZ stuff working again. Get AZ. Yeah, here we go. So some of the simple AZ commandlets show just a little description of what they're doing, and they can provide as much or as little detail as they want. And so that's a little bit about the PSReadLine beta release. The other thing I wanted to talk about briefly is the completion predictor. So the completion predictor is a predictor we developed that just uses the simple tab completion. This is what I was showing you earlier that uses that helps populate parameters and .NET objects. So we did a recent release of that 2 weeks ago. We are on version 0.1.1. We did a number of just bug fixes as well as included some ways to some help for with CD and dir. We kind of have included some tab completion for that. We've also done some stuff with Git, and I'll refer to kind of our blog post here to show off some of the cool capabilities with Git, as I'll probably fumble it in a moment. So I'll share all of these links in the chat here. But yeah, that's a little bit about the PSReadLine release and the completion predictor release.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Stephen. Very cool stuff. Next up, we have Andy talking about some VS Code extension updates. Andy needs a few minutes. Okay, we will go on to Steve, who's going to give some community day updates.
All right, I'm going to try to be brief because I see that we have a number of community demos looking in the discussion. So here's a short version. As a team, we try to always continue to improve, And one of the things we noticed is that even though we have our community day on Mondays, it basically means team members, whether they're on the OpenSSH side, PowerShell side, VS Code, PowerShellGet, stuff like that. We try to look at community contributions, issues, stuff like that, as a priority on Mondays, right? So that we can make some progress. But on the PowerShell being our biggest project, we have a number of PRs that we're not getting the attention they need, and some contributors were not, let's say, happy, rightfully. So one of the changes that we made is that we now make sure that early in the day for PowerShell community, because it has a larger set of PRs, is that we kind of triage and decide, hey, as a team, which ones are we going to prioritize and focus on? And then the way we identify that to the community is we label those with, there's two labels we're using: community day large and community small. And we try to pick from both buckets. That way we're not just focusing on large ones versus small ones. So both sides kind of get some attention. And so far seems to be helping, because it means that at least our team members are aware like what other team members are looking at, and try to get those in sooner than months or sometimes years later. So hopefully people see that impact. And again, we'll continue to try improving that process as we can. So.
Great, thank you, Steve. Next up, we'll do Sean with the docs update.
Okay, let me, excuse me, clear out my screen here. A couple of new things I want to point out. Here on the community update page, we've added links to the PowerShell usage stats and top contributors BI pages. So it'll take you to these views here. We've also, let me get back. We've got some new content. In April, added 2 new articles for Crescendo about handling errors and transforming arguments. So take a look at those. These are new features in Crescendo 1.1, the beta release. And this shows how you can use it. For example, you could transform a PS credential into a username and password, so that you could pass those to something like NetUse. So that's the purpose behind those. There's another new article I want to point out that we added, and that's documenting our GitHub code spaces. So now contributing to the docs is even easier. You can use our GitHub code space, and that comes pre-configured with all of the recommended VS Code extensions, so you don't have to have those installed in your environment. And speaking of contributions, I want to call out at PowerShell Summit, we did a Hackadoc event, and we had 19 people that contributed 62 PRs to help us clean up 204 articles in the Windows PowerShell docs repository. This is content that has been greatly neglected because there's no direct content owner for it, and this was a big help. And this was a very successful event. Looking to do more of these, and with the code spaces set up, it'll be even easier. And that is my docs update. That leads nicely into the recap for Summit.
Sure, yeah. Stephen, do you want to give a little update on Summit?
Sure. Or
don't forget we have to get back to Andy, by the way. He's back.
Yeah. I've got that on agenda. Andy, do you want to go first? Either way, I'm cool with whatever.
Sure, it's ready to go. Sorry about that. I was
Okay.
testing the demo just before, and it went, nope, not working. Just tested it. We're good. Let me go ahead and share my screen here. So in May, we released a big spring update. We called it Spring Update because it was kind of like in all of April, and then we got to right in May. One of the biggest things that we fixed was we now handle out of support PowerShell in a much better manner. Previously, if you tried to start up the extension with like PowerShell 6 or even PowerShell 7.0 or 7.1, all of which are end of support, not supported, not by the extension, nor by like PowerShell as a team. Like you need to be on the latest supported, not the latest supported. Yes, the latest supported, but that's not 7.0 or 7.1. It would just kind of fail cryptically. We used to have some logic on the PowerShell side that would like send a message back, but that doesn't work if it doesn't start up. And anyway, it is all fixed. Quick little demo now. I'm going to go ahead and start up VS Code. I assume my screen is sharing. Yeah, there we go. You can see the changelog from May. I've got my VS Code here configured so that the default PowerShell is pointing to an old download of PowerShell 7.0. So if I go ahead and open this up, instead of like a cryptic, hey, undefined message after it fails to start, we'll actually see it is trying to start PowerShell 7.1 here. You see that the terminal process doesn't work because like it's using an old version of .NET. Like PowerShell doesn't even start with our module. But look at that. We actually detect what's going on now. We tell you that the old version, that it is old. It's not supported. The latest version is 7.3.4. You can click yes here to open the GitHub release in your browser. That'll just pull you right to here, so you can go download it and install it. And hey, if you're wondering about that support lifecycle, you can go ahead and open the PowerShell install documentation, which takes us to all of PowerShell's install documentation, which even has a nice little link to the PowerShell support lifecycle. So we really hope that this will, well, actually, we've already seen that this reduces the number of issues getting opened against us of like, hey, I started the extension and, well, it just kind of failed and I don't know what to do. We have these actionable error messages taking care of those reasonable scenarios where we can just detect, oh, sorry, you were using an old version of PowerShell. Please go ahead and update. So that was the main part of this release, at least from my side of the work. We also managed to get some great work from community members like Justin Grote in. There's a fantastic new debug configuration that lets you debug binary PowerShell modules, as in like attach the core CLR, like the .NET debugger to them somewhat automatically. I think he gave a demo on that actually at the last community call. That is out in the latest release. As always, please go ahead and keep using the extension, try out the pre-release. Right now, we're doubling down on getting the disappearing output bug in PowerShell 5.1 to go away. Erroneously, we thought we fixed it. We do know what the bug is, and we got a pre-release out last Friday. And then we got a confirmation that it was not actually quite fixed. It turns out that the UE we were applying the reset of the flag to was our UE, and it needs to be an internal UE. So right now I've got a PR open that does like 6 layers of indirect reflection. I'm so sorry, but it's the only way to do it. To get to the internal UE, reset the flag, work around this bug with a transcription, and eventually this big issue of like your output just disappearing when you're using PowerShell 5.1 and have a transcription running should be resolved. I've tested it. I've finally been able to repro. We'll have another pre-release out soon. Go ahead and test that out for us, and we'll be rolling that to stable within the next week or so here. Yeah, that should be it. Thanks so much. Glad you guys liked the extension.
Yay, awesome. Thanks for the update, Andy, and I always appreciate the energy as well. With that, now I'll pass it to Stephen to give a little recap update on the wonderful, the fun, the amazing PowerShell Summit.
Yeah, excuse me.
Right as he's coming.
Yeah, my throat's just been really bothering me today. Yeah, we had a PS Summit, few weeks ago now. End of April, it was held in Bellevue in the Marriott there. I see a number of folks that I recognize who were at the conference, and so it was great seeing you guys there. So myself, Sydney, Jason, Danny, Jim, Dongbo, Sean, Mike, and Steve all made appearances at the conference. I don't think I missed anyone. And we had a number of sessions that I think a lot of folks saw. We had some sessions around shell enhancements, DSC v3, VS Code extension updates, Crescendo, docs, and yeah, all sorts of other stuff. We delivered the State of the Shell presentation there, and yeah, we spent a lot of time talking with the community. We really loved hearing you guys' experience with PowerShell. We met a lot of new folks. It seemed like there was a whole lot of new first-time summit goers this year, which is always awesome. I was introducing a lot of new people to the PowerShell community, so I spent a lot of time also teaching people how to submit issues on GitHub and just how to be part of the community. So I'm hoping that we'll see a lot more new faces in the community coming up. And let me see, what else? Am I missing anything else, Sydney? We appeared on a number of podcasts that you can find on the PowerShell podcast and then the PowerShell News podcast, but I don't believe that one is released yet.
Yeah, no, I would say like the biggest takeaway for me was like just it's so energizing and so much fun for us to like get to see so many of you in person. Like, I'm sorry for those of you that we like didn't get to meet or like that it wasn't accessible for you to come this year. Like, hopefully we'll get to see some of you in Europe. Hopefully we'll get to see some of you next year. But for those of you who did come out to all the way out to Bellevue, like I appreciate so much the time and resources that it took for you guys to come out. And for those of you who took the time to come up and say hi to us, to talk to us, we just like really appreciate it. It means a lot to us. It keeps us going, fills our tank, and makes us excited to like come back and ship some software for you. So just thanks to everyone who came out and talked to us. And in the future, if you do see us at our conference or in the real world, don't hesitate to say hi, because we're literally, if you ever wonder like why we spend the time to come to conferences, it's literally to have the interaction with you. So don't ever hesitate to come say hi to us. And with that, I'll pass it over to James, unless anyone else from the PowerShell team had anything they wanted to say about the conference. All right, James, it's all you.
Hey, awesome. So it was great. It was great to see everyone. It's obviously we got to meet a lot of the PowerShell team for the first time in a couple of years. So I just have two quick announcements. The first one is going to be, so I'm hosting a PowerShell Saturday called PowerShell on the River. It's here in Chattanooga, Tennessee, August 11th and 12th. The CSP is currently open. You go to PowerShell Chat. I'll put it over here in the chat too. .com that has the link to the CSP in it. It does close at the end of the month, and the ticket sales will start June 1st. I think they're $100 is enough to kind of cover lunch and stuff for the 2 days. And then the really big announcement is we're finally ready to announce the dates for the 2024 PowerShell and DevOps Global Summit. So we're coming back to Bellevue. We're going to be at the Meydenbauer Center again. So we're kind of moving venues, and it's going to be April 8th through the 11th. So we're moving it up just a few weeks. But we hope that time frame is going to work better around high school graduations and stuff.
Awesome. Very exciting news. Thanks for breaking news on the PowerShell community call.
Yeah, and we'll have more details and stuff on all of our social media platforms and a blog post on our website tomorrow.
Very cool. Awesome. And with that, I think we are ready to move on to some community demos. Start automating, which is James. Yeah, James, did you want to maybe pick one of your demos?
Yeah, I'll go with UGit, and I'll talk a little bit about how the other two kind of relate to it. And
cool.
Let me start a
Do you
screen
have
share.
Permission or presenter rights already, or do you need me to give them to you?
No, I do not. I do have a virtual cam if that works for everybody, but I've been told presenter rights are better.
Yeah, let me just find you in the, here we go. You are a presenter now.
Thank you. All right, so let's share a screen and then drag some stuff over to it. Okay, you should be seeing a pug, and now some VS Code.
Yep, looks good.
Okay, so I talked about this in lightning rounds Summit a couple years ago. I had a whole presentation on this at the Summit conference. This is UGit. UGit gives you logs as or Git as objects. You can kind of see an immediate difference there. I can also pipe that to get member. Look, I've got commit date, a commit hash, commit message, git command, output lines, the root, the user email, the merge, whether it's been merged, the merge hash, pull request number, source, trailers, also an archive, checkout, diff, reset, revert method. So lots of fun here. You can do this for all sorts of different Git commands. So I can go check out my Git branches. This is one of my favorite little pipelines. So I'm on main right now. This is relatively safe. I want to clean up my branches. Okay. Yes, you got confirmation there. Now I've got 2 fewer branches. Yay for me. I also have a demo of this, I think. Yep, so let's see if my show demo from last month works nicely. Oh, not if I don't provide a demo path. All right. So we can get, go ahead.
Hey, James, could you zoom in a little bit?
Sure. Hopefully this won't completely screw up my formatting. That does not look like the right direction. Better?
Yeah, that looks better.
Cool. So you can pipe into Git commands. If I pipe in a file, it's going to go get me data on that particular file. It also supports Git branch, as mentioned. I already did the cool thing to filter out stuff that's not in the current branch. You can use what if, although I'm not going to get anything fun back from there because I already deleted that. I should have thought of that before I started my demo. I can get status, and going to make an extra little file here, and I can actually get the untracked files from Git status. I can do the same thing with Git diff. These are all PowerShell objects coming back formatted. Recently, it started to open up the door to extending parameters in Git as well. So I can do something like git log after to get stuff in the last month. Sorry, my demo gods are being cruel. I don't have a current branch, so that's also not going to be fun for me right now. But here, let's search for a text string module version. Ah, demo gods be cruel. Sorry. Looks like I've got a bug to fix. One other thing that it does is also add progress always to git clone and return objects for that. Go remove that. And let's talk briefly on how it works. Aliases went over absolutely everything, so basically we alias Git to use Git. When we override Git, we can use those extra parameters and parse its output. We do this with extensions. There's get uget extension. Okay. An extension can apply to use Git or outget. Outget extensions will turn Git output objects into, or when the Git command matches the pattern. So if I look for outget, these are all the different things that I can support transforming. So branches, checkouts, clones, commits, diffs, anything with a file name, anything with file output, grep, help, all, init, log, move, push, pull, ref, log, remote, remove, short log, stash, and status. And there are a few commands that are extended. Git clone already adds progress. Git log adds some convenience parameters, and git commit adds some convenience parameters. Each extension will return a property bag, which can then be extended with uget types and uget format.ps1xml. And that's done with easy out. So you've got a formatting directory here that says how I'm going to format Git branches, or Git clone, or Git diff. Some of these get wonderfully complicated and colorful because I want them to look as good as Git, if not better. And I think I've kind of gotten close to the end of the rapid demo here. To kind of highlight a couple of different things, though, again, this is a useful module for working with Git. It adds a lot to it. It turns things into objects. It's built on top of a strong foundation of a few other PowerShell modules. Easy out is used to build your formatting and types. A module called Piecemeal is used to build get uget extension. And just a little bit of pipe script is used to help, say, standardize the docs. So here, rather than write out each of the different extensions by hand, I can have it generate that tiny bit of my markdown. And before we get caught in all of the weeds of different projects, I'd like to kind of highlight the high-level approach that this is doing differently from something like Crescendo. In something like Crescendo, we're trying to kind of force console users into a PowerShell world and make them relearn stuff. We're building a bridge that they may or may not want to use or relearn. with this sort of technique, which is called command interception, you're basically letting people's muscle memory work for them and just getting the PowerShell benefit by turning things into objects. This is a fairly extensible and easy approach that you could apply to wrapping any executable, and that's kind of UGet in a quick nutshell. So I will pause for questions here because we've only got X minutes left and I don't want to take them all up.
You just take questions in chat. I think that will help. If questions come up.
Sounds good. It looks like there's one question in the chat that we can answer, but since I think we want to get through a couple more, potentially 2 more demos, we'll see if we can speed through them.
Does this interfere with other tools, right? Or were you asking Justin to start his demo?
I was going to ask Justin to start his demo, but if you want to answer that one really quick. Okay.
Really quick, yes and no. If you do have like multiple parameters mapped, it might complain to you. I'm doing a fair amount of magic to try to ensure that it, creates as little problem as possible. I don't want to go into that now because limited time frame. But as of the most recent build of UGet, there is also the alias RealGet. So I can go ahead and RealGet log N3, and I'm basically, getting the real version of Git. So you can also obviously resolve the command yourself just to an application and call Git naturally. I'm not deleting git.exe. I'm just making an alias work instead. Okay, done now. I'm going to stop sharing.
Cool. Justin, are you already a presenter? I'm trying to find you in the chat or in the list.
And Cindy, Andrew says he thinks he's fixed it. Should we give him a chance?
Oh, yeah. Let's see it, Andrew. Justin gets to present all the time, so I'd rather give the time.
I'm not a presenter because I had to log off and.
Oh, okay. Yes, I got you. Let me find you. Luckily, your name is Andrew, so you're at the top of the list because it's alphabetical. Okay, you are now a presenter.
Just a sec. Yeah, here it is. Do you see?
Yes,
the
we see
now?
VS Code. Or yes, this is VS Code. Yes, we see it. Hurrah!
So, few words, right? I'm talking about Jupyter notebooks, which are a great way to create, interactive documentation. And there is an extension for VS Code which allows you to do that right in the VS Code. And then there is a thing called .NET Interactive, which allows you to run Jupyter kernel, which runs C# code and PowerShell code. So that basically gives us an option to create, interactive documentation for almost anything, and keep it in source control, so share it and so on and so forth. So I can show just a couple of things here, right? For example, this notebook is a set of commands that allow to kind of structure and calculate subnets, and I kind of frequently use it to do that when I work with Azure. So there is a module I also wrote some time ago that does it, and this piece of documentation is basically showing how to use it, right? So we can see the commands, we can just run a few things to define subnets, get the breakdown, and then there is a piece of code that shows it or does it a little bit differently through providing CIDR ranges, and then you also can log into Azure and execute some code that interacts with Azure, for example. The fancier thing here is that you can also use like some visualization stuff that comes with Jupyter. For example, we can like visualize the topology of a network, for example. So we have a set of, I created some topology in my subscription, but basically the notebook and the pieces of the code that we store here allow us to pull the topology, build a graph, and then display it. So I executed some of this in advance. So probably I can try to export the graph, and this shows that you can have PowerShell code and C# code in the same notebook, and they can interact using a feature that allows sharing variables. So, for example, the top part of this book notebook creates a set of VNets and connections between them, and then we can just use some JavaScript to visualize these kind of things. And this demo basically, if you go through the notebook, it kind of tries to detect the cases where a VNet has only one peered connection, so there is no link back. That's why this thing is highlighted in red. But this is just a demo, right? So all of these nice visualization features are here. So you can basically connect whatever you have in your PowerShell to any kind of visualizations or visualization libraries that you can use from JavaScript and display them in such a notebook. That's probably it I wanted to show. I'll post a link to the GitHub repo that has these two books as well as notebooks, as well as some others, like VM optimization stuff related to Azure and stuff like that. That's probably it I wanted to share.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Andrew. It's also always awesome to have new folks come onto the call and give demos, and thanks for sharing the GitHub link as well. That's really great. We have just about 5 minutes left. Justin or Mike, are either of your demos super duper fast? Do either one of you want to go really quick?
I'm super fast and super boring. I don't
Super
mind if
fast
I
and
get
super
bumped.
boring?
I don't mind if I get
Yeah.
bumped. It's up to Justin. All right, I'll go.
Yeah, super fast and super boring is exactly what we're looking for, Mike.
Well, I'm the king of boring, so let's do this. I just need you to make me a presenter.
Oh, shoot. Yeah, I should have been doing that all along.
That's okay.
Okay.
I think I'm on either Mike or Kanakis.
Okay. It's me scroll. I found you. Okay.
All right, so I'll try to do a little lead in here. Okay, share. So this is less of a demo and more of a public service reminder. So when I got on the call in the beginning, I said, hey, I want to talk a little bit about why people shouldn't use NSLookup. And someone, I think James, said, oh, you're going to talk about how you can use Crescendo to make NSLookup better. And I said, no. And that's exactly the point. I do a lot of infrastructure work, and I deal with people all the time to do DNS lookups. And everybody that comes to me says, I did an NSLookup and I found my stuff. And I show them that I use Resolve-DnsName, and nobody seems to know this command exists. So I want to bring some highlight to Resolve-DnsName and remind people that you don't always have to go and reinvent a way to take an old tool and make it work with something like Crescendo. Sometimes the PowerShell team's already done that for us. So here we go. Very quick lookup here, right? If you don't know NSLookup, it's used to pull back DNS records. So here I am, I'm pulling back some A records. Here I am pulling back some MX records. Here I am pulling up start of authority information for my website, right? Well, what's wrong with that? The problem is that this is string data. So when I want to go look this up and I want to pull it back to use it, look what I'm going to get back. I'm going to get a string, And if I break this out here real quick, right, this is an array of data. And I know everybody on the call knows where I'm going with this already. If I want to pull that data and I need to parse it out, that is super hard to do. But if I want to use Resolve-DnsName to do that, it's a very simple task. So here's the same exact command. Look at that nice formatted structure. I don't have to do anything. If I want to pull out some data from that, make a customized lookup, look, I get an IP address back for my A record. If I want to pull out start of authority information, look at this nice formatting. Everything nice and sweet. If I need to customize that, I can do it just with a simple where object. Let me pull this in here, do a lookup, and then I go, I can pull in all the records for this particular name server. If I need to find a particular name server and what the IP address is, whoops, I jumped the gun there a little bit. There it is. I can pull up an IP address. I can't do any of this in NSLOOKUP. And rather than sit there and try to rewrite this with Crescendo, that's a fantastic idea. Why do I need to do that? It already exists. And it just burns me that seems nobody needs to know that this command exists. So look, here I am pulling up all the A records that have just IP info. If I don't know how to use NSLOOKUP, there's two camps for NSLOOKUP. You use it every day and you know all the syntax by heart. And if you don't use it all the time, you go and you Google the syntax because you don't know how the hell it works. If I'm doing this with PowerShell, well, I don't even need to look, right? I can do Resolve-DnsName. I can just say, oh, look, whoops, name. Hey, come on. Look at that. I got a name I could use. Type. Ooh, I know types. I can do an MX record. Look at that. I pull that back. Super simple. So if you didn't know about Resolve-DnsName before today and you love NSLOOKUP, give Resolve-DnsName some love, and let's not forget about the tools that the Microsoft team already built for us. That's it. Hope everybody had a great day.
Awesome.
Mike.
I love it, Mike.
Awesome.
Oh, go ahead.
Let me just ask something real quick. I think this actually brings up a great plug for our new feedback provider. I'm going to ask Steven to take a note on this. There's probably a bunch of native commands in Windows that have equivalent and better commandlets. So we can certainly have a feedback provider plugin where if you run NSLOOKUP, we're obviously going to allow that to run, but then we can also provide feedback and say, did you know about Resolve-DnsName?
Yeah.
So.
And so, you know, I come on these calls and I love to watch people like Justin and James do super great stuff. So you guys do all the cutting edge stuff, but I am literally a one-line guy that does infrastructure lookups all day long. And there's a whole set of tools out there that we don't even realize exist. And people just rely on the old standards. So I just wanted to show one commandlet. We could do this every week, every month for a year and not highlight them all. But I just thought maybe people don't even know that exists.
Yeah, actually, I feel really bad. I didn't know that exists, and I've had to use NSLOOKUP at points for years.
Yeah.
I almost wonder if it might make sense to have a PowerShell mode that will auto replace or auto alias some of these well-known ones. Because I get the wget kind of potential for falling into a rabbit hole there. I don't think it should be a default, but how else, other than suggestion mode, am I supposed to get a full list of, hey, I was migrating from being a console user. What are all the equivalent PowerShell commands?
So James, I think we don't want to revisit the alias curl situation that we had years ago, right? But this is where the feedback provider can provide a lot of value in terms of helping the user with discovery, because we can inform them in a you can argue whether it's intrusive, but a way that doesn't impact existing scripts. And when they're using it interactively, we can inform them, right? It's like, hey, did you know about this thing, kind of thing. So.
Mm-hmm.
Hey,
I'd also say real quick on a lot of 101 courses and classes and stuff, it'd be good to intro stuff like this, especially for sysadmins that are transitioning over to PowerShell. Just make that part of the core training. Like here's how you do it the old way. Here's how you do it the new way.
There has been a number of articles over the years on various different blog posts and whatnot that does include some of these sort of tools. But I think the problem what we've had generally is centralizing some of this stuff, because as you can tell, it's difficult if it goes on somebody's blog post and then for whatever reason their blog comes offline. That's articles that we've then lost as part of the community, which is unfortunate. For me, this kind of is PowerShell docs, but not PowerShell docs. it might be worthwhile adding an area for that as a community contribution in the PowerShell docs repository, or it might be better to have it as blog posts in the community blog posts.
My goal always was to work with Jason and Sean and not try to be the innovator of the PowerShell community, but highlight simple use cases for stuff that's already out there in like 5-minute video demos. That's what I would love to do in the future. We could always talk about that. Hey, ladies and gentlemen, get ready for a super boring demo next month on test connection. And then you can see how you don't need to use ping anymore.
That's a great one to have too. And to clarify, I think I'm thinking of some little piece of metadata we can put on a command that says, this is what native command I relate to. So I can just get all commands that are there in PowerShell and find out what their native equivalents would be. So let's take this offline to figure out a way to make it cool and non-breaking.
There's also a significant number of modules that have been posted to the gallery that implement some additional functionality that the underlying tools, like say, for example, one that came up in the community and on PowerShell repo earlier is about QInsta and QUser. That's an admin tool for Windows, but isn't available on other systems.
And so my other goal with this was to hopefully show people on the call that we don't always have to do the whiz-bang, really cutting edge stuff. There is value in sharing stuff that's already out there.
Oh, definitely. 100% agree with you, Mike.
Totally love it, Mike. And obviously this was a huge conversation starter. I'm just like racking my brain of like where the best place would be to continue this conversation. Maybe I can open up an issue in the PowerShell
discussion, not an issue.
Discussion. In the PowerShell. I'll open up a discussion in the
PowerShell discussion.
repo. Yeah, I'll open up an issue in the PowerShell repo. I can link it in the notes for this community call as well, just so people will be able to find it if they're watching this recording. And we can wrap up this community call. Thank you so much to all of the folks who demoed today and participated in this conversation. I think this was a really great community call. I'll do like one last very shameless plug before we finish today, which is that I am trying to create PowerShell content for TikTok. And so if anybody is also on TikTok and has ideas of like the kind of videos or content that they would like to see or would be interesting or helpful on TikTok in particular, please reach out and let me know. But with that, thank you so much for attending this call. Look forward to the discussion for next month's call, and please comment if you would like to demo or have any topics you'd like us to discuss. But thanks again for attending this call and have a wonderful Thursday. I will see you later. Bye, everyone.